Hello and welcome to the Greatest Movies of All Time series. I'm your host, the greatest movie of all time. And what is the greatest movie of all time? The Garfield movie, a movie that I like to consider the greatest movie of all time.
Odie's a family name, you know.
This is the Garfield movie, the ever-famous movie where Garfield's voiced by Bill Murray because Bill Murray had a dream once where Garfield came to him and gave him the best lasagna he'd ever had in his life.
So do you have any regrets?
Garfield, maybe?
So if this is the greatest movie of all time, surely the plot's good, right? Imagine a plot that's really good. John has a crush on Liz and thinks she wants to take their relationship to the next level.
John, there's something important I need to ask you.
I think I know where this is going.
You do?
I do.
Yep, the classic I thought a girl liked me, but it turned out she just wanted to give me a dog. A plotline which barely even makes sense when you remember that in the comics, Odie was actually Lyman's dog. And who's Lyman? No idea, the comics killed him off. We don't really talk about Lyman anymore. But, Odie's just cramping Garfield's style. Look at him sitting in that chair, like, who does he think he is, Garfield? He's dead. And then here they are outside. Garfield in a bucket and Odie not in a bucket. So what does Odie do?
Uh-oh, don't touch that.
Then they start dancing. They dance outside. Arlene
and
Nermal
are
looking at Garfield like he's having a good time and not thinking anything weird of it, but nope. Garfield has to be all like,
Odie, what are you doing here? I was...
Wait, so you're saying that the other creatures don't care if Garfield and Odie dance together?
yeah, but I mean, just remember who it is we're talking about here. This is Garfield, and he looks like Al McWiggins' Cheeto fingers grew sentience and created a persona. He looks like a main character, he is the main character, and he knows it. And he knows that Odie to him, no-dee. Get it? Because it's like Odie, but no. And now that we've got the mandatory 2000s children movie dance scene out of the way, we go to a dog show where John takes Odie just to watch. You know, he just takes him to watch the dog show. Garfield tags along secretly and ends up just causing a whole bunch of mayhem to happen. But through the wake of the mess, Odie runs on down and starts dancing like he danced a scene ago. This attracts the attention of the one, the only, Happy Chapman. Now let me tell you a little backstory on Happy Chapman here. He sucks. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, Happy Chapman wants Odie, but John won't give him to him.
This is exactly the kind of dog that could have a future in television.
No.
Okay.
Garfield then locks Odie out of the house because he doesn't like him. And yes,
Odie on the way?
and after he ran away, Garfield tries going back to normal while John starts flipping out because Odie's missing.
Odie! 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 Odie!
Odie's gone, Liz has now come over, and John has to awkwardly explain to her that,
Odie's run away.
What?
and then the rest of the movie until the end scene, at least the rest of the movie from John and Liz's perspective, is all about them trying to find Odie. Garfield's, however, let me just have my friend sum it up.
Garfield goes on an adventure.
Weird delivery, but yeah. Garfield goes on an adventure because he has the biggest change of heart that he has ever had in his life. Remember when he danced with Odie? And so now he's determined to get his friend back.
Garfield travels all the way across the city of Garfieldville to the Happy Chapman building. He arrives at the Happy Chapman building where a mouse tells him the air vents smell like lasagna. Garfield, of course, loves lasagna, and so he enters the air vents. He finds Odie, and Garfield has finally found him.
I found you.
This is where the movie ends.
Except not really. The movie most definitely does not end there, and you left out an entire scene about Garfield giving a speech to mice about memory foam mousetraps, but you are correct about Garfield and Odie reuniting, because they do that, until Happy Chapman walks in and completely foils Garfield's plans. Happy Chapman's plans, though, involves a dog collar that can turn any dog into Flipsy from the Fairly Odd Parents. That looks PETA-friendly. I wonder what their comment on this movie was. Neat. Now that Garfield knows that Odie's in trouble, it's up to him to go to the rescue. And so he jumps out of like the 8th-story window and then falls into the lasagna truck that sends you to prison. Then he proves he belongs in there because he terribly sings public domain masterpieces like...
Could you please be...
Then he conveniently meets Persnickety, Happy Chapman's old cat, whose real name is Sir Roland, but Happy Chapman just called him Persnickety, and that's not important information, I'm just telling you that. Happy Chapman ended up throwing Persnickety in jail because he got Odie and Odie replaced him. So then Garfield has to awkwardly tell Persnickety that
I'm trying to rescue the dog that replaced you, Persnickety.
And I know you'd probably expect this weird moment of why would I help you save the dog that replaced me? But Garfield ends up giving a speech that's just so good. Listen to this angelic masterpiece in your eardrums.
At first I thought he was a pain, but he's grown on me like a wart you want to have removed until you realize it defines you in some funny way.
That was perfect. It was so good that Persnickety presses the button that goes and frees all the animals so that Garfield can go and find his Odie. Now this is an important detail to know that all the animals were released here, but that detail's important for later, and I want later to come now, so let's go to later. If there's one thing this movie has in common with Thomas the Tank Engine, it's trains. Happy Chapman loves trains. Riding trains is Happy Chapman's bread and butter, and he's a yeastaholic. He gets on a train with Odie being placed in the storage section, and recently released from jail Garfield has to find him.
Garfield has finally found him.
But unfortunately, the train is taking off.
This leads us to another big moment from the comics that gets brought up here that I really appreciate, and that's that Garfield actually knows how trains work. We learn this in the spin-off book, Garfield is Fat and Can Control Trains. This especially comes in handy considering that the train Happy Chapman's on is already departed from the train station. And then there's a massive train crash pile-up.
All stop.
I lied, that didn't happen. The train goes back to the station, Garfield finds and frees Odie, and then they go to some storage area where a bunch of people's luggage are. You know what happens when you take candy from a baby? Yep, but here, Chapman's the baby and Odie's the candy. And now, he's angry Chapman. And then he looks out the window and watches Odie run off all by himself because Garfield is a CGI monstrosity, and what's actually added in post, this is a movie, that isn't real. But he does get angry, and he angrily leaves the train so he can Happy Chapman down some stairs and Happy Chapman through a crowd of people until he can Happy Chapmanily go up to Garfield and Odie. Happy Chapman. This is where we reach the climax of the movie. Remember the animals from prison? Well, they also conveniently show up knowing exactly where Garfield and Odie are somehow, and they quickly drain Happy Chapman's health bar to 0. Happy Chapman somehow survives a vicious multi-animal mauling, but let's pretend he didn't. John and Liz show up, but wait, how did they know where Garfield and Odie were? Let's rewind a bit and look at their side of the story. They talked to the old lady from earlier who told them Happy Chapman got Odie, and this led them to the train station, which then led them to where they're at now. And that was the John and Liz extravaganza. That's what happened with them. But now they're all together. Happy Chapman is... John, Liz, Odie, Garfield, and John again go back to the house, and John and Liz are now a couple because of course they are. And then Garfield dances by himself because he learned nothing, in true Garfield fashion. And then words that usually happen at the end of a movie happen. And that was the Garfield movie. Now, I'm not saying this is the greatest movie at all time or anything, but it is. Just take the casting, for instance. They nailed the characters here. When you think John, how could you not think Breckenmeyer? He just is John Arbuckle. And Liz being Jennifer Love Hewitt? Get out of here. Go to a different video. This one's garbage. And then there's Garfield. I like to think Garfield speaks for himself.
I hate Mondays.
And as for Arlene and Nermal, I just think it's unfortunate that gray cats don't exist in the real world to truly represent what Nermal is, and it doesn't look like Arlene has a front gap in her teeth to really be true to the comics, but once you add that with a mediocre story and kind of cringy writing, then I truly think that that makes up the greatest movie of all time, Episode 1.
That movie sucked!